There we go. So what I hadn't shared with you yet is some of my own journey of presenting things. And you've all, or most of you have done the chicken satay. This is exactly the recipe that I shared with you. My chicken satay, my mum's peanut sauce. On the right, it's a lovely brown, tasty blob because it's served with chips and mayo. And on the left, it's a slightly less brown blob because I'm serving it there with stir-fried vegetables. But it's the home style way I used to serve it, and still serve it to my friends for a main meal. Nothing wrong with it. But then I started to need to learn how to present it as a starter to clients. So it needed to be a little bit posher. So on the left, it's served on the client's plates. And when I go to a client, I don't necessarily know whether it's a big plate or a large plate or a small plate. I don't know. I see that when I get there. And what I've done here, and I do that throughout, is to create a little bit of height. So instead of putting the satays next to each other, I'm putting the satays one on top of the other, slightly at an angle, and that little height suddenly does something. And the other thing I've done is I serve it with a little bit of my achar champur, the recipe I've also shared with you, and put that on a little bit of a green leaf, just to give a little bit of color so that it's not a brown blob. On the right, exactly the same, except this time on my own plates, where the achar stands out more, so that color contrast. Again, it's the same recipe as what I shared with you. It's the same recipe, exactly the same sauce as on the previous slide. I've sprinkled it with a little bit of crushed roasted peanuts. That is it. Now, the one on the right is nearly how I present it now, with one tiny difference. Now, have a look at how the actual skewers are actually sitting over the achar champur. That's actually not a handy way of eating, but also the way I serve it now is exactly the same as on the previous slide, but I've actually moved the skewers to go out to the outside. It's easier to eat, but bizarrely, it actually looks strangely more generous because suddenly those skewers pointing over the plate, it makes it feel as if there's more on the plate than in the previous one. There isn't, but that's how it looks to you. So that's just going back to the first one that I showed you, yeah, to same recipe, okay? Just to get your head around what a little bit of thought can do. So I'll give you another example. So I went to a Christmas pop-up restaurant some years ago. It was a Scottish theme, and one of the dishes, which is on the left, is the original, was a poached salmon rillette, and it was served just with a few oat cakes and a little bit of extra smoked salmon and some lemon. So I went home and I recreated it just by thinking what would be in it. It's simply bound together with a little bit of creme fraiche. The recipe, by the way, is on my website if you want to have a look at it. So that was my copycat creation, which looks pretty similar, right? And then I thought, okay, I can do more with this. And exactly that same recipe, I then thought I can serve this as an amuse. So I serve it in tiny little glasses, and on top is just a little bit of avocado, blitzed in with some creme fraiche of half and half, a little bit of fake caviar and a caper berry. By the way, those remind me of E.T., and I think that the second one there is drunk, and the first one is trying to look after the one that's drunk. But other than that, it's exactly the same recipe, just a different way of how you can present it and what you can do with it. Very easy recipe. So I'm like, okay, I can do more with this. So I serve it as a starter as well, with a little bit of pickled cucumber on the top. This is on clients' plates, which means they're fairly small. I don't have a lot of room to play around with the salad on the side. But again, this is exactly the same recipe as what I served in the jar on the first slide. Yeah, just different ways of looking at it. Ideally, I like to present it on my own plates like this. Exactly the same recipe, again with a little bit of pickled cucumber. This time I put the cucumber through a spiralizer, so it's like cucumber spaghetti. And as these are bigger plates, these are glass plates, I have more room to play around with a little bit of salad. That's all it is. It's the same recipe as I served in the jar at first. Whenever I bring this out to clients, they go, oh, wow! It's a simple salmon rillette, not difficult. All right? I'm going to share another one with you. This is exactly the same recipe again, but this time I used smoked haddock instead of salmon. Same recipe, simply bound together with a little bit of creme fraiche, salt, pepper, a little bit of dill maybe. In this case, actually, I left out the dill because I wanted it to look quite white. And here I'm serving it on canapé spoons. I've put those on a rectangular piece of slate. I put that in turn on a black tray with a little bit of fake grass. Exactly the same recipe, but the eye makes it feel as if it's now become something extremely luxurious. And I can take that one step further. These are alternating the smoked haddock rillette and the smoked salmon rillette. And I've put them here in, and I buy these. These are charcoal mini cones. Little bit of caviar on the top. Okay, there's another lacy biscuit. That's maybe not so easy. But again, it's exactly coming from that same recipe that I copycat from that pop-up restaurant a few Christmases ago. And these are all the different ways that I can serve them. Exactly the same simple recipe. Now you can imagine when I bring this out to a canapé party, everyone's going, wow. I went wow when I did it the first time. I thought, this is looking good. I'm happy with that. Same recipe. You eat with your eyes. The recipe does not have to become more complicated, but you can think about how you can use, adapt, and serve the same recipe in different ways to just be a little bit more creative. And you'll get a wow for exactly that simple recipe. Tastes exactly nice, tastes lovely, but you eat with your eyes. Let's do another one. I like this one. So this is it says it on the side. It's not really a panna cotta. It's set with because it's not cooked. Panna cotta would be cooked cream, but it's a rhubarb and pistachio yogurt panna cotta served in a glass. There's a little bit of rhubarb jelly at the bottom, then the yogurt, then a little bit of rhubarb puree, a few pistachios, and I made some pistachio tuile. Now, one guest couldn't make it, so I had one left. What did I do the next day? I thought, I'm going to play around with plating, because I was learning at the time as well, right? Now, from that, exactly what you see here, I did this. It's exactly the same. I just took it out of the glass. I had a little bit of extra puree left. I broke up a couple of those tuiles, and I presented it as if it was a set of something really expensive. It wasn't. It's a very simple recipe, which again is also on my website. But again, it's the same as that, which looks nice, right? This is very edible. Looks perfectly acceptable. And then you can play around.